In this lecture, we'll talk about shutdown decisions, and like many investment decisions, a key idea to keep in the back of our minds is the idea of looking ahead and reasoning back. Avoidable costs are costs that can be recovered by shutting down, and an avoidable cost is a key idea when contemplating a shutdown decision. The basic idea in any shutdown decision is if the benefits of shutting down are larger than the costs of shutting down, then you should shut down. What are the benefits of shutting down? The benefits of shutting down are that you recover some avoidable costs. What are the costs of shutting down? The costs of shutting down are the foregone revenue on the products not sold. And so the break-even price is the average avoidable cost per unit. So shutdown decisions are made using break-even prices rather than quantities. The break-even price, again, is the average avoidable cost per unit. The profit is, of course, if we calculate profit as revenue minus cost, the price minus the avoidable cost times the quantity would give us the profitability level. If you shut down, you lose revenue, but you get back the avoidable cost. So if the average avoidable cost is less than the price, then you should shut down. Determining avoidable costs can be difficult, and it's easy to kind of get hung up, and this is true whether you're looking at a standard economics textbook or just kind of using these concepts of avoidable costs. It's a very vague term. What is an avoidable cost? And that brings us into what economists often like to talk about as a cost taxonomy. The cost taxonomy is something that's used to try to help us kind of identify and make concrete what costs are avoidable and what costs are not. So let's look at a cost taxonomy and talk our way through this very simple diagram. In terms of all costs, the first thing that we can do is identify whether a cost is an unavoidable or sunk cost versus an avoidable cost. Sunk costs, costs that have already been incurred, are unavoidable by their very nature. Nothing we do in the future will change the fact that we've already incurred those. Avoidable costs, however, we can break down into what I'll call short run or long run. And you might ask, well, what do we mean by short run and long run? And the simple answer is it varies in every situation. Short run is really just a term that economists will use to describe those costs that are variable, that are changing with production levels or production quantities. Long run costs or fixed costs are those that don't change over a particular horizon. Now, what might be a fixed cost over a one-year horizon might become an avoidable or variable cost over a longer, say, 10-year horizon. So a lot of this is just really specific to the particular instance that you're looking at or dealing with. So let's look at a simple example. And let's suppose that we've got a firm that has a fixed cost of $100 per year. Let's make it concrete. Let's suppose this is a one-year renewable lease, and they've just signed the lease. So over the next one-year period, they're locked into that. That's a fixed cost over the next one-year period. Now, when it comes up for renewal, then it might become an avoidable cost. But if we are, at least for now, looking at the one-year period, that one-year renewable lease that they've just signed is unavoidable over the next year. In addition, the firm is incurring costs, marginal costs, of $5 per unit. Now, those costs are avoidable right now. If I make the product, one more unit of the product, I incur $5 additional of marginal expense. If I decide not to make that product, then I avoid that cost. So this marginal cost, a per unit cost, is avoidable now and into the future. So that would be an immediately avoidable cost. And the quantity that this firm expects to sell is 100 units. So we could ask, what is the break-even price for this particular scenario? Remember, the break-even price being kind of what we're going to use that break-even price for is, do we shut this production down or do we keep producing? So the break-even price in this particular scenario, it's going to vary depending on whether we're talking about short run or long run. Now, I've just defined this kind of break point between short and long run as a one-year period based on that fixed cost being a one-year renewable lease. Over the short run, we would say that the average avoidable cost is $5 per unit. If we can produce and sell these products for $5 a unit or more over the short run, we should continue producing them. Let's say we can sell them for $5.50 a piece. Over the short run, over the next 1 year period, that's going to be a good decision. We ought to go ahead and produce 100 units, sell them at $5.50, even though we are incurring marginal costs of $5 per unit. What would that work out to be in terms of incremental profit? Well, we would be selling 100 at $5.50. That'd be $550. Our marginal cost would be $500. So we'd basically be making $50 more by doing that than we would if we shut down right away. However, we can step back, and your intuition might be kind of saying, well, okay, yes, that's true, but let's step back and ask, as a going concern, is this a profitable thing to be selling these products at $5.50? And long run, the answer is no. Long run, the answer is no, because in the long run, that 1 year renewable lease is also avoidable. So if we were going out over, say, a 10-year horizon, we might say, yes, we've locked in the lease for the first year. It makes sense to go ahead and produce because our incremental revenue is higher than our marginal cost. But if we're going out beyond that year, then the fixed cost, the lease expense, becomes an avoidable cost. After the first year, we can avoid that as well. Now, the lease works out to be an average of $1 per unit. $100 divided by a quantity of 100. And so in that case, going long run beyond a year, the average avoidable cost per unit works out to be $5 plus $1 or $6. In that case, going very long term, we would look at this and say the average avoidable cost beyond the first year is $6. If the price is only $5.50, then long term it makes sense to shut this production down. It's not adding economic value over the long haul. And so when the lease comes up for renewal, at that point it would become an avoidable cost, and the most likely decision would be to shut down production. Thanks for listening.